Welcome to Saints on Cinema. I'm Tim Wild, and Zach is back with me to discuss Cobra Kai. We are on, what are we at, Zach? Episodes 5 and 6. All in and take a right. And this is where things start getting a little juicy. Last time we were talking about 3 and 4, and things were kind of slowing down a little bit, just kind of getting a little set up. But I actually, I know Josh. I know Josh really likes these episodes. All in starts with Hawk's flashback. And that was one of Josh's favorite things in the first season was when we went back and saw Jonny, when he had a flashback, when it showed him as a kid riding the bike, finding the dojo, and just showed the dysfunctionality of his home life and everything, and his being neglected and all that. This was a little bit similar, but flipped, because when it shows Hawk as a kid, what it did was show his nerdiness with a loving mother, as it seems, trying to encourage him and uplift him with whatever happened to him that day. He was being bullied or whatever. And then
this is a season 1 flashback, actually. You could insert this into season 1. So there's the episode where the teacher comes out to the school and makes an announcement and says, "A mother called me yesterday, and her son, who has a facial deformity." So this is the day before that happened. So this is actually
about that. I can the one. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
And you even said, "Don't call," because they're gonna know it's me, and like, that's not cool. You're absolutely
so funny too, because the teacher, it's so right. The teacher could have said, "Hey, stop bullying people," but she had to throw in, "He has a facial deformity," and you're like, "Yeah, that sounds just like a teacher." Like, yeah, of course.
All right, see, Zach, you should have done the lead in this one instead of letting me do my monologue.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your monologue.
Well, you're fine. No, but the interesting part about that, though, is the line he says, what he's afraid of. It's not the bullying and getting beat up and stuff. That's an instant reaction when she says she's going to call the school. But his biggest worry is that he says, he's afraid he'll never have any friends besides Dimitri, or something like that. And that's really interesting that Dimitri is the one that now feels a little alienated, and Hawk is now kind of has a little clique, and he's kind of the cool guy in charge of him. He's kind of the leader of the gang, similar to the way Jonny was in the first movie. And now they're off, messing around, and Kreese is kind of adopting that body as the Cobra Kai. Interested in Miguel, but I don't think he's really attached to Miguel as a protege like Jonny was. But I just think it's really cool that they took that little second with that one line, just connecting that they were both nerds and losers in the school, and they were each other's only support. Daniel in the first movie didn't have anyone, but he was just a new kid moving in. And then after the beach incident, everyone even backed off of him. Fortunately, Allie came in and rescued him from loneliness. But I just think that was really cool to show Hawk, and then it shows the evolution. I don't know if evolution is the right word, but transition to where it's showing tattoo, impressing his girl, and he's getting up, he's walking out of the parlor, he's like, "Let's go, guys," and they grabbed his bag for him and everything. So he's got his little lackeys. It's just kind of interesting because it shows the application of the Cobra Kai principles and their mantra and what that has done for Hawk, which is cool setup for when Dimitri steps up to him later on in the show.
So this is what I kind of liked. They didn't end up sort of following through with this, but so Cobra Kai for Miguel helped him a lot, and then he kind of starts curbing himself, whereas Hawk just keeps going down that no mercy path. So in the first season, though, I was still on Hawk's side at the end of the series, even though he was kind of a punk. I was still like, I was very much like, well, he's been treated like crap for so long, and now he flipped the script. And he's doing good. But now in this season, I don't feel that anymore. But I'm kind of wondering why they inserted this scene, because then he continued. Was it to try and regarner some sympathy for him, I guess? So from a creative perspective, I'm still trying to figure that out.
Well, I think it goes into the all-in aspect. He has gone all in to what Cobra Kai, in his mind,
related to the episode title. Okay, yeah, that's good.
And that's what I love. And we talked about this in the first season discussions, but like every episode is just so exact and precise on what is coming out of it, and it still just doesn't break in the full storytelling. It's just awesome. I love these titles, even though they're so short and they're so simple. But they're just like, they just mean a lot. But yeah, he goes all in, and that shows what that means. That goes into the next step. the next scene, it cuts to the Cobra Kai training, and you have John and Kreese doing a demo. Now John or Kreese is now established he's going to be helping instruct, and it has them. They're in a grapple and they're stuck, and he's like, okay, you can either, I can't remember, like punch him, but then you're exposed.
You can elbow him or you're exposed. Yeah.
So he says, so he's like, what are you going to do? And then he takes the fall with Kreese, and they both hit the ground. And the message there, as he says, is
whatever you're gonna do, commit to it.
Yeah. So whatever you do, and you may get hurt. And when he says that, since Jonny said, I think, or Kreese looks right at Miguel, or Miguel, the camera looks at Miguel while they're making that point that you may get hurt, but you can't just do nothing.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting that Miguel's the one, and he's like nodding his head like he gets that, and he's the one that eventually gets hurt going all in at the end after he makes a choice. And they weren't talking about mercy right there. They were talking about a decision on how you respond to the situation. He didn't start that fight in the school. He was reacting to it at the end, but he's one that suffered the consequences because he made a decision and went with it. At the end of this episode, you're going to see the results of Hawk, who's gone all in, and what he experiences when he loses his girlfriend. Because his girlfriend, she's like, I like your hair, I like these, your muscles, but I don't think she's pissed that he.
She's so funny. She is a wacko, let me tell you. She's nutso. Yeah, I like the superficial aspects about you, but I don't like that you're mean. I'm like, okay, but whatever.
I don't see that, dude.
That's what I thought.
The first season, when you're talking about Hawk's growth and his flipping the script, my favorite part about that in the first season was the beach scene when he was in there talking to Dimitri. I think it was Dimitri, or else it was the girl. I can't remember.
No. They arrive at the party and she sees him and is like, "Oh, I'm gonna go talk to him."
Right.
Yeah.
And he ends up and has the courage and talks to her. But when he's talking about, I think he's talking about the hair or the tattoo to someone. He's like, it's not about the image. It's about living the moment. It's about being full of life and just going full force and all in or whatever.
Yeah, I think he says that to Dimitri because then he goes and hits on the
other girl. And then
It's like, are you serious? It's like, I think that's her lowest point in her life. When that nerd comes and hits on her, that's when she's like, that's why she's like, what is happening? And goes and gets mad at Aisha.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I think that's the contrast, and I think the going all in is showing what he's done, and that was his behavior, that was his attitude, and I like that, and I really, and we talked about that last year, but I really like that approach, and that's a wonderful philosophy in that going all in. I mean, you don't have to talk about going all in, but it was the attitude change, the flipping the script part. I love that. But he's going in. That was just kind of a foreshadowing of what's going to happen later on, the taking the fall, and you may get hurt. Then it kicks over to Dimitri's first day of real training, and we know he got
perfect. This is so perfect, because how many more times can we see a regular karate training session where they come out at the end of that knowing all the skills and techniques they're supposed to know? I actually really like this a lot.
They had messed up. Josh didn't like this part. And Josh, really? not necessarily this scene, but he thought Dimitri was a little over the top whiny in this season. He was one of our favorites in the first season because he was just kind of a casual observer on the side of the whole series. And he just had some really funny lines that were true to his character in the lunchroom and stuff. But then he got beat up in class and left, or got punched in the face or whatever.
Right.
But in this one, he's just there a lot more. I think, they check their fans.
I do agree he is pretty annoying. But I'm not totally opposed to a story arc, because I thought it was much more subtle than a lot of other characters, and it was a much larger struggle for him to even accomplish basics, which I appreciate. So
now here's my defense of Dimitri. It's funny. This is when I'd argue with Josh. You look at Daniel in the first movie. Was he much less whiny and annoying when Miyagi was trying to tell him to do something? I mean, if you think about not just the chore. I mean, just him and his mom.
I can't move my arm, okay?
Yeah, exactly. And he wasn't like, I'm a wuss, I can't do anything. He's just hot-headed, but he was just as whiny This is, like Luke from A New Hope. It was just.
That's why I was gonna say Luke Skywalker. I was gonna go down to Touchy Station and get some power converters.
Right. But that's a starting point for where he can go from there. Mark Hamill even talked about that scene, so that's why I try to be as whiny as possible, so I have somewhere to go, because Luke has an arc.
Right.
But it really works for Dimitri, and I like later on when you see it start to change, where he starts flipping it out. But we talked about being so paranoid in the I think it's the next episode. Excuse me, when they're doing that in training. But he's struggling with the anxiety, but he's doing it for a reason. He tells Daniel, my friends became jerks when they joined Cobra Kai. I just want to be able to defend myself. I just want to be able to show I can fight back.
Right.
That's awesome. And it's awesome that he found a safe place to do it, because we know in the last episode he went up and messed with John Kreese's tattoo and he got punched in the face or whatever. But I mean, this is a cool thing. And then this leads into the story with him and Hawk. But before we get there, we have another wonderful Sam and Robbie moment. Our lovely, ridiculous romance between them.
Romeo and Juliet, they're probably going to kill them. To the end of this season, and it's kind of really messed up. You're like, I don't know where the show's going to go.
Now, I have some theories about Robbie that we'll talk about when we get there in another episode. But this is where they're hanging out. And they're at the cafeteria at the mall, and they have a few minutes to themselves, and they start talking about Dirty Dancing. They're talking about the '80s thing, and my thought is both of them have watched Dirty Dancing a lot. I can't see Daniel or Jonny liking that movie. I saw it for the first time like a decade ago, way past the '80s, and it was a different type of movie than I ever thought it would be. But this is not the kind of thing that these guys would be interested in. I don't think any millennials would like this movie. Do you disagree? This isn't like a breakfast or a cult classic, or this isn't like something that's just.
Well, it is kind of a cult classic, I think. For
it is.
But
for girls.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you about Robbie?
But no, it is pretty interesting when he's like, "Yeah, I watched it." I honestly, in that moment, the thought that came to my head was, he's lying to make her like him. That's honestly what came to my head. But I don't know if that's what the writers intended, but as a guy, that's what I thought.
I liked a couple of scenes from it. I don't remember them, but I liked a couple of scenes from it. But
well, you can't put baby in a corner. That's like classic, one of the classic lines of all time. And the lift.
Yeah, everything, the parts we've seen a million parodies of throughout.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not the kind of show that he would be like, yeah, actually, I watched it a lot. And I can see him maybe saying that, or even he did. But I don't remember if he said it was his mom or dad made him watch it. But then, but Sam goes, "You mean you forced to?" And he's like, "Okay, kind of liked it." It's like, okay.
That's why I think he was lying. He's just being a boy. Okay.
All right. So then we have, while they're having their little romantic moment over at the food court. It goes back to the pizzeria or wherever the Cobra Kai hang out, and there you have Miguel sitting there on his laptop hacking this little
graphic together.
Yeah, and then Tori's sitting there throwing stuff at him, getting his attention. He's really smooth. I love Miguel so much. I wish I was Miguel, but he's just so smooth. He's just like, hey, he's like he's focused. He's not being a jerk, but he's not really connecting with these guys. He's listening.
Right.
He's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going all in. I'm like, that's awesome, dude. And I love that he's trying to fight back for Sam. And he's trying to do something. And then she comes and she thinks he's looking at porn or something. She's like, is it dirty? Let me see. So cute. But she's trying to play with him. And she wants to look at what he's doing. He's like, well, I could use a woman. He's like, this is not going to go well. I want you to promise you won't lie. She's like, I can't promise. He turns it. And I'm like, and as soon as you see it, you're like, okay, I can see why he was hesitant. It's embarrassing.
It's pretty cheesy. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, but high school kid making a graphic to get his girlfriend back. I'm gonna let pass. I'm not gonna say I was.
I don't think it was unrealistic. I think it was. He was. Yeah. I did stupid stuff like that when I was a teenager.
Right.
In fact, I made to ask my date to prom. I made a website, but this was 2000, year 2000. And it had a little slideshow where you would click through. So creating a website was kind of a big deal then. I created it on GeoCities. You could have a free website. and it had just horrible graphics, the old school design with the bars and everything, and she just clicked through with pictures of me getting ready and then asking her to prom.
Aww.
And at the time, it was voted the most creative way in our group of friends to ask someone to prom. So I won that.
You guys.
But it was so cheesy. And nowadays, if someone would be all like, anyone can make a website. That's not creative at all. Like, did you put any effort into asking them out?
Everyone except for me can do it.
Yeah.
But
So
here's what I like about that moment or that scene. He turns it around, and it really starts to show her feelings for him. Other than she was like flirting with him a little bit earlier, and they had the sparring match earlier in her first introduction. But she's looking at it, and she's like, when it comes up, she's like, "Hey, what is this?" And then his picture pops up on the little heart, and then she like smiles. It cuts her. It's awesome editing right here, but she smiles, and she's like, "He's so cute." And then Sam's picture comes up, and she like rolls her eyes like.
Well, and I'm thinking she might be hoping that her picture is going to come up in that moment.
Oh my gosh, I didn't think about that.
But then it doesn't. She's like,
yeah. And it's interesting because I don't think it's because she like knew they were together or a thing.
Right.
She knew her from the freaking at the beach club thing, and they had their little mini interaction. But so she was already annoyed. She recognized the girl, and he's like, "This is my ex-girlfriend." She's like, "This is your girlfriend," whatever. And then the little he's like, "Oh wait, check this out!" And the little stupid octopus comes up. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But whatever. Again, I'm not criticizing. I couldn't do that, or come with anything more creative. But he explains this is the not the unicorn, the octopus, and that's kind of their little thing. And that's cute because later on, that's what the stuff down when she sees that triggers that she when she's thinking about him and he's thinking about her. That's what reminds her of their date and their magic. And so I like that scene because it really connects the three of them, exposing her feelings or Tori's feelings for Miguel, and then also showing his response to her. And then she says, "You want my opinion? You need to delete it. You need to, have your laptop cremated, destroy the whole thing, and like just get on, and get on with it." And she's telling him, how you get her back is to just not do anything, just to forget about her and have fun, just live your life, dude. And basically,
which is she's weirdly ends up being correct about that. Like Sam starts getting jealous when she sees them together, and it works pretty effectively.
It's not a setup. I didn't think she was saying anything in her head. If I get him to hang out with me instead of worrying about Sam, then we'll be together. I don't think that was the agenda. I think it was hopeful in her mind, but I think she genuinely did think this is what you should do. This is ridiculous. She's not going to go for this. This is embarrassing and stupid. But forget about her. Move on with your life, and be happy. Show her that you're happy, and that you even have a chance. Because right now you sound pathetic and desperate.
Right.
You feel like desperate. So hang out, or we'll go hang out. And she's like, in the meantime, who knows what will happen between us.
I also like that Miguel is one of our main characters. This is the first time in this season he finally is being proactive as a main character. And I'm always much more interested in proactive main characters. I don't like it when they sit around waiting for things to happen to them. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to go all in." And I'm going to do
the first season too, when he asked her on the date and went on the date and everything.
He was very proactive in the first season. The whole time he chased Jonny down so that he could learn karate. He used the lessons he learned to get Sam. He practiced all the time for the tournament to get the tournament. He was very proactive. This season, until this point, he's just like moping around, kind of being mellow, and
he hasn't had a lot to do because he is still responding, still processing what's happened and everything. But I'm glad he had that time to kind of cool down after the tournament, where he can reflect on the changes he was making and who he was becoming, and he didn't like that guy. And then by the end of this one, he's not that guy anymore, and I love that.
I just didn't like it because we're halfway through the season. I'm like, dude, finally you're doing something. Freaking finally. Like,
all right.
That's all right.
So
we can disagree on that.
That's all right. That's what this show's about, is disagreement. Of critics here. Okay. Then we go to a fun scene. This is where it goes to, or in the meantime, Hawk has read Dimitri's Yelp review of Cobra Kai and gave it 1 star and talked about how unruly it is and how the master, the sensei's out of control and it's unsafe, whatever. And he's like, who's this guy think he is? He sees this Dimitri. And that triggers just the fire in him. Now, what I love about the confrontation that happens is they go back, they're at the cafeteria in the mall, and Dimitri comes up interrupting the pathetic lovebirds on their little conversation about dirty dancing. And he says, oh my gosh, it's Wednesday. It's comic book day. The new issue of whatever is out. And so he has to run to the comic book. He's like, do you guys want anything from comic book store? And they're like, no, dude. And, and I love that detail because comic book day is Wednesday.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Hey, we got it right. Anyway, I appreciate it.
Not only that, the thing I like this from a filmmaking perspective or a storytelling perspective is, Dimitri and Hawk are best friends. Hawk reads the review. You don't have to have that terrible line where Hawk goes, oh, Dimitri's going to be at the comic book store because it's Wednesday. He just he's just shows up there while Dimitri's there, and you as an audience member are like, oh yeah, they're best friends. Of course you would know they were there.
Exactly, I was about to say that. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
I love that. It's subtle. They didn't need that line, but like anyone paying attention is like, okay, they're best friends. They said at the beginning of the episode, It's like comic book day. He wasn't hunting him down all over town, or like in any other show would do that. He knew exactly where he would be, and he just had to kind of stalk the comic book store until Dimitri came in. I love that. And
excellent visual storytelling. That's top-notch visual storytelling. If they had that line in there, I would be saying the opposite. I'd be all like, audience is not that stupid.
Right. And we'll get to where I'm going to say the audience is not that stupid with something.
Okay.
You probably know what I'm going to say. Anyway, so he goes. They have the confrontation. Here's what I noticed. I love the line where he says, "You got Bebop and Rocksteady here," because I think that's awesome. Because when it cuts to those two dudes,
they're like, "What?"
The Bebop, Rocksteady, like dense moron. They're just. I mean, nothing against them, but I'm just like.
Oh, right. It's totally true.
And then they're gonna start the fight. He was like, "Is this where we're at?" And he's like, and Hawk is not Hawk. Dimitri is genuinely like surprised that this is. He's not like
it's escalated to this point.
Yeah. He's just like, "What? You're gonna beat me up? Is this how far this has gone now? Is he gonna actually hit me?" And then he's like, and then the guys coming behind was like, "Now is this where we are now?" It was like gang beatings or whatever. And then he says, "Well, I've been trained," so he's like ready to fight back, which is a huge step for Dimitri from what happened in the last couple episodes. So, and especially after he's been getting nothing out of Daniel, because he's a wimp, and he's just cowering and everything.
Right.
But he's so confident enough to stand up to Hawk, who he already saw at the tournament. Knows he can just kick his butt, but he's like, whatever, I'm gonna step up to this. He didn't just run away until he gets taken down with a sweep, and then he's like, okay, and then he runs away. But that's I admire the kid for doing that much.
Yep.
Then they chase him. Okay, then he goes back to the cafeteria. He told them don't leave or whatever, or heat my wings hot or whatever. And he gets in there, and then they're gone. He's like, of course they're gone. After running into the sunglasses display or something like that, just had to have a little comedic routine there, because you have to show a little bit of the pursuit. And the interesting thing, I love this, the black kid that ends up joining Miyagi-Do in the comic book story is like, Bebop and Rocksteady, is this where we are, is gang fighting or whatever? It cuts to the black kid, and he kind of looks away like he's embarrassed to be there.
Yeah,
I like that. And then when it shows the chase, after he knocks down sunglasses, they're chasing him. The black kid's like, dude, maybe we shouldn't do this. He's like, and I can't remember what he says, but Hawk's like, no, there's no mercy or whatever, or we're going all in. And they continue the pursuit. And the black kid's there, and I wanted to pay attention to the choreography. What does he do during the he has a name. I shouldn't be calling
him the fight.
Chris or something. What is it?
I don't remember his name.
Anyway, Chris. Oh no, I wrote Kiss. I don't know. Anyway, the black kid, Rocksteady.
Yeah. Okay.
He would be Bebop, because Bebop initially was the black, and then Rocksteady was the blonde. Like, anyway.
Who knows?
I'm gonna call him Bebop and Rocksteady the rest of the show. So anyway, so Bebop comes around the corner, and he goes, but I wanted to see what he did in the fight. But he gets in there. They're surrounding Dimitri. They're gonna beat him up in the middle of the food court. This is ridiculous. This isn't like this cafeteria fight that sprung out in season 1. This is the public.
It's a mall fight, yeah.
Like security and people are gonna be. There's gonna be cops coming,
Right.
Apparently, we don't worry about that in this show.
No.
But they come in.
No one worries about getting expelled either, but that's
No.
for a later episode.
Not at all. This is all. Until someone breaks their back. Oh.
Oh, yeah.
I guess now we gotta be serious. Anyway, so he gets in the food court and they're gonna come in and they ambush him. No, they don't ambush. They surround him. They're kind of they're stalking like wolves. They're coming around, and then all of a sudden, here comes Sam. Now again, I go back to the last episode. This would have been the chase sequence that would have been cool for Miyagi to fight back the bullies. But that's okay. They didn't have to mirror that. I'm just saying that this is the sequence that would have been kind of cool versus the beach where he's beating up kids with Robbie who already knows how to fight. But whatever.
Right.
But anyway, this works differently because now you have Robbie and Sam jump in and they surround, or they go on was it Printer? Point, but they're fighting on both flanks of the bullies attacking. And then it cuts right to an aerial view. And notice Sam struck first. I don't know if you got that. Sam came in and did the first hit, even though they hit him at the comic book store. They didn't know what was going on. But Sam came in and hit first. I think that's kind of interesting. But anyway, it cuts to the overhead view, the aerial shot of them in the circle, rotating while they're blocking and fighting. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. It's showing the wheel.
Yep.
And then it literally showed the wheel, and it kept cutting. And I was like, oh, no, don't interrupt.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Here's what's funny, too, is I liked that moment, especially because it was a fairly reasonable approach to the technique they were learning.
Yeah.
Like, you're all like, oh, if you're protecting someone, you keep them between you, and they're moving in a circle to keep the people outside around them. I'm not saying it would necessarily work in a real street fight, but at least the logic is there for a right?
For a martial arts story.
Right. But yeah, then to keep flashing back, you're all like...
A lot. It wasn't just like once or twice. They did like half the fight was showing the freaking yard that we already saw.
Yeah.
Now, you just watched it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember in the first cafeteria fight with Miguel beating up the bullies, it didn't cut to the Cobra Kai stuff, right?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a straight...
It was, you could see everything he was doing.
Yeah.
And then later on, he was talking to Jonny all excited. He's like, oh, and I did this. And he was describing each thing that he was taught how to do. And he did it. And I was like, a coil, whatever it was.
I slithered. I anticipated.
Yeah. And he just described that. But you as an audience member are not stupid. We noticed that he did it. And we're like, oh, that's kind of cool. But in this one, now the audience won't. Even if we put an aerial view where they're in a circle rotating around them doing the fighting, the audience probably won't visually be able to see that. We better put a picture of the wheel.
They're doing that a lot this season. I wonder if they have different editors or it's a new style they're pushing for. Maybe they got feedback that people are like, we don't get it. Yeah. don't make the show for those people.
Yeah, so ignore them. The first one was do what you're doing right. Anyway, it just bothered me.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then so Sam strikes first. They win and they get out and they're like, oh, that's awesome. So in the aftermath of that battle, then they're back at the house. Sam and Robbie are sitting there like, oh, that was pretty fun. Yeah, that was kind of cool. And then it shows Dimitri sitting in the background. Jonny comes and talks to them. Are you okay? And then he says to Jonny, or not Jonny, Robbie.
Yeah.
You're a member of the family, basically. And then he goes on and talks to Dimitri, and then he makes an awesome reference to Game of Thrones, and he's talking about, I don't remember which one it was. It was some of the White Walkers or something like that. But he talks about the I can't remember. He's
Sam Tarly. The guy says, I'm Sam Tarly. And he's like, Sam Tarly killed a White Walker.
Yeah, that's it. That's what it was. Exactly.
So, what I really liked about that is a good instructor, and I think a good instructor in any discipline, finds a way to connect with their students.
Right.
And so Daniel finding that way to connect with him. And there ends up being at least the one other Game of Thrones reference, if not a couple other Game of Thrones references.
Which I thought was too much. This point was anyone can be the hero.
Yes.
I like.
Yeah.
And he's like, you watch Game of Thrones, and he's like, oh, GOT is awesome, or whatever he says. So I was like, okay.
That line was dumb, but that's okay. He's a dad now. He can make dumb jokes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, well, it reminded me of Modern Family with the dad in there that's always trying to use.
Be cool and use the lingo. Yeah.
I was like, that was just as cheesy. Whatever, it worked for us scene. The
Yeah.
very next episode, they make another Game of Thrones reference. I'm like, okay, now we're overdoing it. But whatever. And then it cuts to Hawk losing his girlfriend, and she's talking about like this. I like these, but I don't like what you did. You beat up Dimitri, and she was like, man, he was your friend. And now he's seeing that this was the fall, this was the consequence, and he got hurt by losing his girlfriend in the because he went all in, as he told the other bullies. And then he goes back to the dojo and starts punching the beanbag. Now, what I hate about that is, have you ever noticed that every time it shows Jonny going to the dojo, he has to unlock it. But anytime in the middle of the night anyone else ever goes, it's just open.
It's just open all the time.
It's weird. And I don't.
Well, this is why I'm like, has Kreese been doing his secret lessons through the whole episode?
Yeah.
He just opens the doors. Well, I just don't even know what's going on. It's pretty weird.
Yeah, but whatever. He goes in and then he starts punching the punching bag in the back, and then getting out his frustration. And then Kreese comes in, goes in the back, and he talks to him and he says, what's going on? And he's what does he say? He challenges him.
He says that the fight's not over until.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
It's over.
That's right. He says, lost. He's like, well, fight's never over, whatever. And then he decides, in continuing his decision to go all in, he's going to go back to Miyagi-Do and he toilet papers the place with the.
Oh my gosh!
Literally, it shows.
So are we jumping into the next episode too, as well? Like
this was the end. He spray paints it. He goes in, but I noticed that Bebop was not with the group. I was paying attention to that, and it was hard to tell because there was another kid that looked like Bebop. It was a little bit skinnier Bebop, but he goes in. So Black Kid didn't go into the vandalism. So I think at this point he's already kind of niched his way out of that little group. There was something else though before that next episode. Oh, our beautiful romances. It cuts back to Tony Miguel's date. Tori and Miguel are sitting there.
They're hanging out, looking at the stars, see the plane.
And then, and she like pulls him back, and you're doing a good job. And then he mentions Sam, and that pisses off Tori. She's like, "Oh, you almost went an hour without mentioning her." He's like, "I'm sorry." He's like, "I'm just trying to, get on with it or go or move on." Or he didn't say go all in. What did he say? He did say, he says trying to make him move. That's what it was. And then she turns to him and she says, well, go for it. Make him move. And then I'm like, And then this was my second favorite kiss of this series. Well, third favorite kiss of this series. First two being Sam and their first kiss in the first one. And then Sam and Miguel in this one at the end of this season. I like Tori. I like her a lot.
I actually like her too. They're kind of hinting that she's bad, but she hasn't done anything too terribly bad until she spike punches Sam. That's pretty rough. But at the same time, she's kind of stealing her boyfriend. So.
Yeah, whatever. It's
not okay to spike punch someone ever, but it's not like it was unprovoked. Right.
Well, that comes up in the next episode, but yes, I agree. But it shows though they have their kiss, and I'm like just so excited. I'm like, that's good for you, Miguel. And at that point, watching through the first time, I was like, okay, if Miguel and Tori hook up, I'm okay with that, even though he's not with Sam. As long as him and Sam get closure and that they're cool, that's all I want. It goes past that. Now I'm afraid of I don't know what I want with Tori and Miguel, because I want him and Sam together by the end of it. Now, after we saw this flip again. But I don't know, we'll get to that. But at this moment, I was just like, at that point, I was like, okay, I'm excited. I don't care who he ends up with, but I just want them to be cool and him just to come out on top as this freaking stud that he is. But then it cuts to the stupid Sam and Robbie. She comes in and she's like, oh, that was pretty awesome. They're sitting there doing marshmallows. And he starts one on fire. She blows it out. And they have their mouths like they're both together.
And then he stops.
And they're like, and then they have their stupid kiss. Oh no, they stop. They don't kiss. You're right.
Yeah, they yeah.
And then he's like, I've been through a lot and I just don't want to ruin it. And she's like, I understand. And he's like, oh, well, this is awkward. I'm like, yeah, you're an idiot, dude.
Yeah, you're an idiot. And she doesn't understand. Like, she says that to be nice, but like, no, she's just like,
When you're in the middle of an explanation and a girl cuts you off saying, I understand, and she seems as blank as Sam was, that means she thinks that it's her and you need to do some damage control. That's free advice for anyone that's dating and blowing out marshmallows with a chick. I'm just saying. But when she said, I understand, in that defeated mode that she did, he's like, I just made it. It's awkward now. It's like, dude, you need to either explain what's wrong, where you keep all this baggage and everything hidden, or make it where you help her feel comfortable, help her understand your approach. Or even if you're not ready to tell her all your baggage, that's fine. But don't just leave it there all cold and awkward, because then next time you try and kiss her, unless it's in a script, it's not going to happen, and you're losing ground at this point. And now she's embarrassed. You need to help her not feel embarrassed. And just saying, this is awkward, that's not going to cut it. Anyway, free advice from Tim, single, divorced man, Tim.
They eventually get over it, but it is, I mean, how their relationship is awkward for the next little while just makes total sense after that moment.
And the whole time he's been friend zoned, and then he does that, and she's like, well, that's the last time I'd make a step. Even though she's the one that kissed Miguel. Oh, I love them together. Anyway, okay. Then they trash the dojo, and then it cuts back to Jonny. We missed a conversation with Carmen that was very important. Carmen, he goes back after he's been tracking down Robbie. He finds out Robbie was evicted. There's a eviction notice on the door, and he goes into LaRusso's dealership, and he went to like 4 of them trying to find where Robbie is, but Robbie's there. He's living in the dojo with Daniel. They're not working at all.
Yeah, that's right. And he liver punches Anshu, or what I think his name is. Oh my gosh.
And he's like, this isn't a tournament or dojo. This is real life.
This isn't your soap opera, your karate soap opera. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah, and he like nails him. Anyway, so he finds out, and now he's mad, and now he's drinking, and he's drinking and driving. Don't do that, kids. But he's drinking, and you can tell he's getting emotional. Jonny is not that reckless and doing that normally. He's really getting emotional and frustrated because he figures out that LaRusso, Daniel pretty much is adopting Robbie. And in Daniel's defense, he did go to approach Jonny about it in the previous episode, and that's when Kreese, they kind of drew the line in the dirt. But anyway, this made him mad. So he goes back to the house, and before he goes in his house, Carmen comes out and says, "Oh, Miguel or whatever," and then she can tell that something's wrong.
Yep.
And what does she say? I wrote it down word for word. He's talking about the rivalry. He's always stressed about Cobra Kai and everything, but she says, these things don't end well. That's very important.
Yep.
The only way to end a rivalry is someone has to rise above it, and she tells him to be the bigger man. So that is just amazing, and I didn't catch that the first time, but it's amazing when you look at what happens at the end of it and how she resents Jonny at the end of this. These things don't end well. Her son's going to freaking be in the hospital, like, very critically. The only way to end a rivalry is someone has to rise above it. This is Jonny rising above the rivalry with Daniel, and he tries to do it at the end of this episode. And it's also at the end, Miguel, in this fight, letting go of Robbie and rising above the fight. Right. Both of those things don't end well, at least immediately in the interim.
So what's interesting too, I mean, Robbie's been on an interesting path. I wasn't expecting him to be the one who was going to be the cause of that, but I think these connect really well to the end of Karate Kid Part 2. Well, the beginning and end of Karate Kid Part 2. The beginning, Miyagi fights Kreese, or I don't even know if you'd call it fighting. He dodges Kreese's punches, but then he grabs him and he's like, and then honks the nose, right? And then Daniel does the same at the end. I mean, when it came to being serious and life-threatening, they didn't follow through with it. But Robbie went through. I guess it was kind of on accident. But the point is, he didn't do that. But Miguel did. Miguel did the okay. I've won. I'm good. Yeah.
In the tournament or at the end of this one?
The end of this one, Miguel did. He beat him, and then he's like, I'm done.
It's like that's where he had the honor or mercy dispute or challenge. Yes. And he made a decision. And then he was hurt. Oh, this episode is just full of good lines like that. I love it.
It's good. Yeah, it's a good setup for that.
Then they trash this is the foreshadow. So we have the setup. Now we have foreshadowing. Now we're going to start going to execution. Well, no, we have to get derailed for a little bit. But the end of this one, it shows Jonny in the dojo, and then Daniel comes in the dojo after he sees that they defaced his the dojo in Miyagi's yard, and spray painted on the car, and like that seemed to be the most hurtful thing. He touches the car, and then it shows a flashback that he got the car from Miyagi. It's like, come on, guys, we've seen the movie, we get it. Anyway, done with that.
I'm gonna throw this out there though. I get why Kreese would want this, but stealing the Medal of Honor is beyond horrible. That is messed up. Like,
and I don't think Kreese sent them with an agenda, but I think that would piss off Kreese. And I don't know how much of that was really known, because when Daniel struts into the dojo, and I love Jonny say, "Hey, take off your shoes. You're disrespecting my dojo." I love that. He goes in there and he's saying that in front of the kids, because Daniel was there in the first season. That line wasn't able. This is now his dojo, and he's got a little more confidence, and he's taking more seriously. He's trying to teach his kids respect, and also I can't back down from this guy coming in. So he comes in and he's like, Johnny's not backing down. And then as soon as he says something, you think that's how you win a Medal of Honor. And props to Ralph Macchio. I think this was a really good performance in this scene. You can tell he was frustrated. He's angry, but he's also trying to keep it cool. But he's getting emotional. He's like, that's not how you get a Medal of Honor, or whatever the line is. But he does really good. And I was bag on Daniel. I can't stand Daniel as a character in a lot of ways. Some I love him. But in this scene, I loved Ralph Macchio's.
And I do like that line. It was in the trailer too, but when he says, I'm not going to throw the first punch.
Yes.
Like he's ready to fight, but he's not going to start it.
Yeah. He would. I don't think he would. I think he was so determined right there. I think it would have been fine fighting Jonny right there with his own students right there and Kreese in the corner. Yeah. And that would be the most horrifying thing for Daniel in any other time in his life. I'm sorry, that's the truth. This has always been a horrible, terrifying.
I don't know. When Silver and Kreese and Mike Barnes all show up, that's probably pretty freaking terrifying. I by myself, I'm like, 3 karate masters against me, and I probably can't beat any of them. But anyways, this is pretty close too.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. But he goes in, stretches himself, and he says, "That's not how you do it." And he's like, "Go ahead." And he's like, I'm not going to strike first. And then Jonny says, he takes Carmen's advice, says, "I'm going to be the bigger man."
Yep.
And I love it. And then, a little ridiculously, half the kids walk out. And I'm like, okay, hang on. They're like barefoot in their gis. They grab it. They just kind of walk out the door. I'm like, that's kind of weird. If you're going to quit, that's a cinematic moment to do that. That's just in writing in Hollywood. That was really unrealistic that many kids respond when only 3 kids vandalized. Only 3 kids knew what he was even talking about. None of these kids were even in the dojo last year at the tournament. So it's like, why do they suddenly have this loyalty and they walk out? And then only 2 or 3 kids show up at Miyagi the next day. So like 10 kids leave. The rest of them just went home? They didn't want to learn karate anymore? This is dumb. I don't want to be in my 40s and have a rivalry with some dude. I'm giving up karate.
There's a lot of truth to that, though. I would be looking at these guys like, what the crap is going on?
Or they'd be asking questions like, "Sensei," like he's like, "Silence!" But like it was dramatic, and Johnny sitting there, his look in his face was good too, and they all left. But it's like, hey, that was a little too many kids. If like 1 or 2 went out, then you'd see, okay, great. Daniel planted some seeds and got these kids thinking. But to have half the studio walk out, I was like, that was a little much just from that little interaction. Because Jonny didn't get embarrassed, and Daniel has a little speech. So he's going to teach you whatever, how to be mean and whatever. But he's pathetic and he's a loser in life or whatever. They're going to just buy that. They're very loyal to Jonny. They've demonstrated that, and they continue to demonstrate that when Kreese starts trying to poison their minds.
Right.
So like, Daniel just some dude who's a salesman or whatever. I don't know. I just thought too many kids walked out. They tried to overemphasize that. But anyway, that was All In. Good episode. It's really good. It's good stuff and good. It's the fun stuff with the kids, and that's what I like about this series of the kids stuff right now, and Jonny. But yeah. Anyway, So now the story has settled in a little bit, and now we stopped for a little detour episode. And they did this in the first season when Jonny and Daniel took off in the car when they were doing the test drive, and they went and had their little bromance evening together.
Which was an amazing episode. I actually loved that.
Absolutely, not knocking it at all. Had a lot of insight on how both of them saw each other and Allie and their circumstances when they first met. Talked a lot about Daniel and his family. Talked about Jonny and how Daniel didn't know as much as he thought he did. He can't judge him because he was rich. Things about Allie and their situation and just their bonding. A lot of things they had in common that they didn't realize about cars and music or whatever. Really good episode. This one, we stopped from the main story to go on a little detour just for the fans, really.
They do set up a couple little things back at in the dojos. Like there's a few things that continue and some good lessons learned. Yeah. But yeah, really, it's mostly
Jonny just kind of steps out for this to kind of, because everyone's wondering where's the rest of the kids. I know Josh loves this episode. Josh was obsessed with knowing where Josh has a thing about bullies. I don't know, but Josh really wanted to know where Cobra Kai was.
He's influenced by nostalgia a lot, I guess. So that's okay. That's okay.
All right. Especially Dutch. He is fascinated with Dutch. He loves Dutch, and he just wants Dutch back. And I know Billy Zabka was talking about this in an interview. He's like, he actually has reached out, or they've reached out and interacted with the dude that plays Dutch, and he may be, and I don't know. He may be. I don't know if he's just not available or not interested. I can't remember what he said, but they have had contact and discussion.
He's in prison, obviously. That's what they.
5 to 10 years, as we said. Anyway, so it opens here with a beautiful moment where it shows a couple of hands hammering and setting up, planting and everything, establishing the backyard and the dojo. And when I first watched it, I thought it was Daniel, because I'm kind of non-perceptive sometimes. And then it shows the beautiful landscape of the yard, and then it shows Miyagi from the back step in.
Yeah, kind of a profile back.
Dark hair, slightly balding, white beard, just kind of looks off a little bit. And I'm like, oh, and he's wearing his little brown suit that he wears. Beautiful scene. And I was like, this is how you tribute Miyagi. This is how you do it. You don't have Jonny or Daniel talking to some fisherman on the beach and be like, I thought you were my friend. That was dumb. Like this
is the guy ends up being the spiritual successor of Miyagi anyways. Yeah, it was super weird.
A little too much. It was forced. Yeah. This is how you want to show and help us remember and care about Miyagi. I like this stuff better than the graveyard scene.
Well, and this is a flashback that's meaningful, right? Because you're like, oh, Miyagi does trash. But then this sort of goes, hey, we want to remind you, Miyagi built this.
Yes.
And I think that's worthwhile. Yeah.
Yeah. And you never saw it, you know, and they didn't need a line. They didn't need anything. They didn't need, I don't know. We never saw it. It's not like I needed to see visually Miyagi setting up the dojo. I knew it happened and whatever. But just seeing that brought us back into the world. If I had a lingering from the previous episode to this episode, oh yeah, here's the dojo, and oh yeah, now here's Daniel and the students trying to clean it. Really cool. Meanwhile, back in the Cobra Kai dojo, you have John Kreese and Jonny trying to figure out who was it that vandalized Miyagi.
No, this I like. I mean, it's to the detriment of his students' faithfulness to him. Jonny legitimately wants Cobra Kai to go a different direction, and he's pretty dedicated to that.
Yeah, he's kind of upset about this.
Yes, he's not okay with this.
Yeah. So Kreese is like, excellent, you know, everything's falling into his plan, and he's seeing a little bit of divide here. And Kreese is also testing Hawk a little bit. He wants to see how far he'll go. He wants to see how much endurance and stamina.
And this is when I think you get to see too. This is later in the episode, but how manipulative Kreese can be, because the lesson that he tells the Cobra Kai is not a bad lesson.
No,
it's just being applied to the exact wrong situation.
Right.
But he's like, who did this? Hawk did it, and Miguel did it, and you did it. You're all in it together, and especially with his war background, that makes so much sense for his character too, because
is how he treats the students. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to that, because that applies to what's going on with Jonny and his buddies too. It was really cool cut they do right there. But he says in there, when one of you makes a move, you all make a move. and you live and die in consequences, or you live and die in consequence and the spoils.
Yep.
That's what he says, and it cuts back to that later on. But that's really important because these kids have to learn how to work together as a team. And what he's looking at this as an army. Anyway, it's really cool how he's trying to do it, and they're trying to figure out who it was. But Jonny is, like you said, Johnny's really determined to find out who it was that did the vandalizing. And then it cuts to Daniel and his students are out cleaning, and then he gets a phone call, or he's talking to the new students. They come in, is this Miyagi-Do? And he's like, yeah, then come on in. And there's a little resistance. Robbie doesn't trust the kids because Bebop is there. And he's like, he's one of the ones that try to beat up Dimitri, and Dimitri's just kind of in the corner, just kind of stay out of it. And then Johnny or Daniel's like, oh, people could change and everything. I like Daniel's like kind of naivety in that because I mean he hasn't fallen for anyone except for Robbie in the first season, even though that turned out okay. He hasn't gotten blindsided by anyone by being welcoming, and he's not like so ignorant that it's fallen or he's fallen on his face because of it, but he's always welcoming, and that's okay for me, and I won't be surprised if that has a consequence in the show eventually. But brings these kids on, and Bebop and Dimitri are going to lift the rock.
Bebop and Dimitri, okay.
What's that?
No, I thought you were saying Bebop and Rocksteady have a.
Oh, yeah, Rocksteady's Cobra Kai. Bebop is
yeah.
So they have a little tiff, and so he's like, "Hey, you guys are gonna lift this big rock," and he's trying to figure that out. But then he turns around. It's really funny. He's like talking to the new students. It cuts back to Sam or something. I can't remember. You hear Daniel in the background. He's like, "Oh, you don't have to call me sir. Just call me Mr. LaRusso." I'm like, they're like, "Mr. LaRusso is fine." I'm like, well, that's kind of a jerk thing to say. You don't have to be so formal. Just call me Mr. LaRusso. That's a literal line. I wrote it down because I was like, that's kind of funny. Okay. Meanwhile, Jonny gets a phone call because one of his buddies is in the hospital. He's like, how bad is it? So we already knew he was there. And then he runs the hospital, and we're introduced to Bobby, Tommy, and Jimmy. Bobby is now a pastor. And now
those three names are so funny, by the way. For those, it's like the writer was just like, yeah, Bobby, Tommy, Jimmy, whatever.
Most common names of 1983.
These characters don't matter anyways. Just give them generic names. Here we go.
Yeah. Now, I looked on IMDb when I watched the show and looking them up on Karate Kid. These guys were not in IMDb in the cast of these characters, at least when I watched the show when it aired. I asked Josh, are these for sure the same actors? He said yes. And Josh knows this because he studies and loves Cobra Kai.
Yeah, I don't think these guys have done any acting really since they came back for this, which is cool.
On the profile, but even for this show, it doesn't show them. I don't know if that was a spoiler they were hanging on to or whatever. But Bobby is now a pastor. Tommy is the one that's sick and he's dying. Jimmy is the family man. He's this one that has this family and kids. He's just there. And Josh had some more insights. I talked to him about this episode. He loved this episode. But it's just interesting that Bobby, I had to ask him, was Bobby the guy who in the original movie, was he the one that was kind of feeling guilty about everything? And Josh said, yeah. He's the one when they're beating him up the first time before Miyagi jumps in and they're in the
and is like, hey,
he's had enough, Jonny. Yeah. That's Bobby, and he turned out to be a pastor. And then he's the one that when in the tournament, Creeps was like, I want you to break his leg or snap his leg or whatever. He's like, I can beat this guy. He's like, no, I want him out of commission. He's the one that did that. And he felt guilty. He takes the cheap shot and he's down on the ground. Jonny or Daniel, I'm
sorry. Yeah.
That's Bobby, who turned out to be a pastor. I think that's really cool that they kind of wrote that. Tommy's sick. He's dying. And so they go in there. They all have their little meeting. They talk about getting him out for 40 or 24 hours. He can go with them. He's like, he's not even going to make it. They go out there, get on their motorcycles, and cruise off on their bikes. It cuts back to show them
as kids.
Because they lined up in the.
I think one little flashback was fine. They do a bunch of them.
Yeah, it was too much.
It was maybe too much, but I think it was okay because this is what they're going through, right? It's not necessarily for the audience. It's that this is what the characters they're re-experiencing that moment.
Exactly. Just to remind you that this is because people may have forgotten that first scene. That was in the opening of the movie. or the the first movie. And then when they pushed him on down the hill on the bike. But like this is what they did. When they hung out, they rode around their bikes. They were the richer kids. They had bikes and they just had fun. They pull up their little masks, and their masks are little skeletons.
Yeah.
Their skeleton costumes on Halloween, and they're just the gang again. And they go out, and I really like they're in kind of the same position, and they go do their thing. They cruise around, has some good long shots of them just kind of cruising. Reminded me of Wild Hogs a little bit. That's a great movie, but. They end up and go to this bar. They sit down, just start drinking and talking. And the conversation was get through their story. They start talking about the old times, and you kind of get a little perspective, a couple things they talk about. They talk about how Jonny was dumped by Allie because he went drinking with them. They have a story about the drinking.
Yeah.
And he missed her birthday, and so she dumped him. So that's more of what that inside of what happened that summer before.
Well, that kind of makes sense too when he tells Miguel, "Yeah, we had a fight. I thought we would get over it, But then LaRusso shows up, and it's like,
little hints. And then he tells them that they're like, "Oh, what are you up to, Jonny?" After they talk about Dutch. Dutch is in prison. They talk about some of his juvenile days, and it's not a surprise he's in there for 5 to 10 years. It'd be very easy for them to write him coming into the show. But anyway, he tells them, and I love this. He tells them that he opened up a dojo, and they're like, "Oh, cool." And they're like, "It's kind of neat," because they're like, "You're the champion." Makes perfect sense. And then he's like, "What's that?
What did you call it?"
What'd you call it? He's like, "Cobra Kai," and then they just pale white.
Yeah. They're like,
so good. And you're like, because you always want to know what happened the day after the tournament in the first movie. They're embarrassed. Sensei breaks the trophy. He's like about to kill Jonny, like hits 2 of them, and they're like down. And he's like, he turned on him, and he's a monster. And they realized that when
apparently they ditched him so hard that at least Jonny didn't even know who Terry Silver was. So they didn't even follow to the next year at the tournament to see what happened next year. They were done.
Yeah, Cobra Kai was shut down. Bills weren't paid, because none of the kids came back.
Yep.
So it was interesting it was really cool to see their reaction when he tells them it's Cobra Kai. And that's not the only thing that's back. John Kreese is back. And then you have his defense, and he says, he's telling them that everyone has or deserves a second chance. That's what Jonny says. Meanwhile, at the dojo, you have Dimitri and what's his name, Robbie, kind of concerned about the guy because Sam is saying, well, maybe they've changed, these new students from Cobra Kai, and Johnny's the one. Sorry, Johnny. Robbie's the one. He says people don't change or whatever, and I'm like, that's interesting because you were a punk kid.
Yes. Yep.
Now you're good, but you're saying they can't change. So is that foreshadowing that he's going to be a punk again?
Yeah.
Or is he just an idiot right now and is just too critical and judgmental of other people? I couldn't decide which of those it was, but I was like, that's really.
He's angry about his dad, Jonny. He thinks his dad will never change.
Because he does say Cobra Kai. He's talking about Cobra Kai.
Yeah.
Johnny was Cobra Kai. These kids are Cobra Kai. They're not going to change their colors. So in the Miyagi training, the Chris, that's his name, Chris. But anyway, I'm gonna call him Bebop. Bebop and Dimitri are lifting the rock because that's the thing. They have to learn teamwork, and that's just the thing. And he sits down with the new kids, and Daniel's like, "What's the purpose of karate?" They're spouting off all the Cobra Kai mantra stuff, and he's like, "No, you guys have been brainwashed." Yeah. Oh, and Robbie says you can't change the way you feel. That's what he says. And then Daniel turns around and he says, "Look, I was Cobra Kai," and he teaches them how he was indoctrinated and he was taught and prepared, and it was a big messing with him that they were doing, and he fell for it, but then he failed, and he almost lost everything. Then it cuts to Jonny saying everyone deserves a second chance. I was like, that's really interesting because Jonny or Robbie's learning from Daniel that he had a second chance. Miyagi came in, and he didn't tell that part of the story, but Miyagi came and rescued him. Right. And then Johnny's sitting there telling his friends, no, Kreese deserves a second chance. And he's like kind of saying that for himself. Like, I deserve.
Well, and I think that's why he's so dedicated to this second chance idea, because he feels like he deserves a second chance, and he's getting it.
It's like Lord of the Rings when Frodo is defending Gollum to Sam. He's like, I have to believe in him because I have to believe there's a chance for him. Otherwise, there's no chance for me. And it's I think the exact same thing. Anyway, there's the two trainings going on, and then in Cobra Kai you have Kreese telling them the fight isn't over until the enemy is finished. He's having them spar because he has them stop. He's after the line you're talking about. He says, "You did it, and you did it, and you did it because you all are the same thing. You all have to fight and suffer and win together. You're a team." So then he moves on. He's like, and they're like, well, that's not what Jonny taught us. He's like, well, Johnny's a little misguided, so we're gonna go.
I do like Miguel standing up to Kreese in this episode, because Miguel's like, that's not what's going on, and it is Miguel who does it. This is what I'm talking about: proactive protagonist.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because Hawk wouldn't have done that. Hawk's just buys right into everything that Kreese said. It's flattering to him. Miguel's the one that's like, Chen's like, he has a conscience, so he's like, hang on, this isn't what his loyalty to Johnny wasn't about being a bully. Kreese is teaching them how to be bullies. His loyalty was Johnny was like, Johnny knew how to defend himself. He stuck up for him in the fight in the first episode, and he taught him how to stick up for himself and approach life proactively and everything. And that's changed him into the person he is now. And he's an accomplished dude now. But Hawk is just like, no, he went all on with the badass approach, and and there's no mercy. He's like, this is what got me here. I'm gonna keep doing it. Kind of like Johnny was originally until he saw what Kreese really was during the tournament. But anyway, they go in, and then Tori is, if you notice when he says that, he says the fight isn't over till the enemy's finished. Tori had the other guy down. Oh no, Miguel had the guy down. No, who did? No, Tori did. Tori had the guy down, and he's like, well, finish him.
Yeah.
And he's like, she's like, he's in the, or no, so I'm so sorry, I'm like all over the place. Miguel says we already got the point. He's like, that's not enough. It's not over till your enemy's
right. This isn't a tournament, or you're not always in a tournament. It's not always for sport, and which is true, right? But I mean, there's a time in real life where it's like, if you're defending your family and your life and the life of your family, I'm not going to say if you have them completely contained, it's okay to murder someone. If you had it under control, then that's fine. But if you're defending yourself to the death, that's okay in those scenarios. But that's not the scenario they're in. They're teenagers in a dojo.
Yeah.
You don't get spinning face kick to a kid.
Who kissed my boyfriend drama? Like
right. This is not equivalent. There's no equivalency here.
We learn from every horror movie that when you have the attacker or the murderer or the monster or whoever down, you have to chop his head off. It's not just because you won. You have to finish it. Or as soon as you turn your back, he's going to rise up behind you menacingly and then chase you some more.
Yeah, you got to essentially burn the body.
What? Burn the body?
Burn the body. Make sure it never comes back. But
So Cobra Kai is really good training for surviving horror movies, just for the record. Anyway,
so this is what I think is good about Kreese, though. It's like what he's saying is true.
Yeah.
Just to a point, but he pushes beyond that point, and he's very subtle about it.
Yes, exactly. Miguel later on, and that's the thing with this thought. He says, "Fight until it's over, and until the enemy is finished." When Miguel's fighting at the end, because he looks confused about that statement. And in the end of the show, when he has Robbie down, he could finish him and be fine, or he backs up. And he got the point. If you want to look at it that way, and then he stopped, and then he suffered for it. This is the whole all-in thing. I think that's really interesting that he's the one that responded. But when you see Tori fight at the end, it's like no mercy. She's like, this is life. There's no rules or whatever. She's not tournament or whatever. She has spikes on, takes cheap shots, and she's ready to freaking kill Sam. She's like just kind of snapped at that point. But what happens right there when he says that, and it shows both their expressions. He goes on, and then later on they're in the back room kicking and training some more. Miguel says, "Wow, that's kind of crazy, wasn't it?" And she's like, "Not that crazy." And then he tells a story. She tells a story about how her mom was a waitress or whatever, and like used to steal food so that her family had something to eat.
Yeah.
The fire and everything. It's like some people have everything and they're cool, but other people you have to fight for every inch. That's not a bad lesson, and that's true. There's a difference between breaking the law. I'm not condoning stealing and stuff, but this is where Tori's coming from, and this is where you're saying she's not like a bad girl. she's had a rough background that's forced her to kind of fight for herself. She sees a guy she likes. He has a girlfriend. She's like, well, some girls, rich and go to the beach clubs and everything and have everything they want. Dad's a very huge success. My mom raised us. We're struggling and starving. I took a couple kickboxing lessons. Now I'm kicking butt in Cobra Kai. I'm going to take every inch I can and do whatever I can to get it. Well, that's her mentality because that's what that's been her life so far. I like that insight, and I just love the character. Anyway.
I hope she's back next season. I hope she's not a one and done season.
No, I don't see how it's too interesting. The love square. Yeah, she says lesson's not that crazy, and then she says the world shows up us no mercy, so why should we? That's Cobra Kai, and that's what Jonny was teaching them.
Jonny taught that at the end of last season. That was his big speech in the tournament episode.
I love it. Yeah. Anyway, Miguel apologizes to Kreese. To Kreese? Who do you apologize? He apologized. He talks to Kreese, yeah, and then Kreese says, well, he's a little misguided. We're going to set him right. And then Miguel's kind of like, okay. And so this is where he's going to go into that little bit in the next couple episodes. But Kreese tells him, this point you were making earlier. Kreese says you're all Cobra Kai for life because a Cobra Kai never dies. That's the thing that got him through the war. That brotherhood, like you were talking about, as a soldier man and everything. That's what connected him. That's what he tried to embody in his dojo with the Cobra. I think different things we don't know about the training, like the going up to the creek, Canyon Creek or whatever. Like there was probably more that happened that kind of united them as this clique. That Kreese just instilled, and this was his patrol. And he said, "I'm teaching these kids not to lose." And he says, "Jonny, you were later on. He says, Jonny, you were my student. I'm not done teaching you." He takes ownership over them, just like Daniel, or just like Jonny says, "I'm responsible for these kids." Kreese could not let go of his student, especially his champion student. So this is what's going into the next couple episodes. I just like that it shows back then Jonny and his buddies, Tommy, which one is it? Bobby? No, Tommy, the one that's sick. They camp. He has a good conversation. It says, Jonny, you still have time. He tells him how, this was Josh's favorite part, that he had a huge crush on Allie. And that's why I joined karate. He said, because you struck first. I was too nervous to talk to her or whatever. They talked all the time, but he didn't ask her out. And then Jonny did. He struck first. And he wanted to learn how to do that, how to be like Jonny. So he took karate to be with him. He really idolized him. It was a really touching scene. He said, but Jonny, you still have time to make decisions, to find a girl, whatever. Because Jonny confesses, I'm not over Allie. I don't think I ever got over her. And then they wake up, and then it plays "The Show Must Go On." It's Queen, right? It's just quiet. You can't hear what's going on. They're yelling at Tommy, trying to wake him up. He's dead. Paramedics come, and they're just sitting there, the three of them, just close together in a tight shot. And while you're watching them watch their friend who's dead, that's when you hear John saying, "Cobra Kai never dies," and he says, "You're Cobra for life." And you see that with Jonny and his friends. They are still banded together, even though they're opposed to the teachings and the label and Kreese. They are still a brotherhood, and that's why that ending was so touching. Josh, I think he said cry. I didn't cry, but it was really good. And I love the use of "The Show Must Go On." Yeah, that really leads right into it. But yeah, and that shows them zipping up space, and yeah, Cobra Kai never dies.
Well, and I think this is like, if Jonny had any doubt before, this is putting his final impression on. I can't be Cobra Kai.
Yeah,
something's got to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And he says something like that. And he says this. He said this is. He starts calling it my Cobra Kai, Johnny Lawrence, Cobra Kai, Johnny Lawrence. He starts labeling it with himself now, and he tells that to Kreese. I think it's the next episode. But that was the end of that, and you see him going forward, where he realizes, I do have time, and there is a responsibility. And he's looking at his friends, and some have struggled, some have been fine. But he's like, we're all in this together, and so are my kids, and I got to make sure that they have the best tutelage possible, and that he is responsible for them. So good heavy episode. Is a lot of it, and then again, it was a bar fight. It was kind of fun.
The bar fight, which happened before that, but yeah, the bar fight was fun. It was fun, kind of fun to see him. You're all like, yeah, these old guys, they obviously haven't done fighting since the first Karate Kid movie, but
The actors, you mean?
yeah, the actors, yeah.
Some of them are fighting and kicking more. The others are just like punching him, took a sheet, or smash them with a chair or whatever.
Yeah, it's fine. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was kind of like it was nostalgia. It was
yeah. It was. You were like, it'd be cool to see them in a fight, and they were fighting for good. They were protecting some chick from some guy that was being a jerk to him, and then he makes the line. He's like, this is the ugliest Make-A-Wish kid I've ever seen. It's like, dude, you're wrong group to mess with, dude. So yeah, they trash him and anyone else that steps in. Good stuff. Anyway, powerful episodes, all in, and take a right. Kind of detours off the main story a little bit. It comes back, and now Johnny's more determined to take real ownership of the dojo and kind of make amends, because I think he's also reflecting on things that went wrong. He says, I don't want these kids to make my mistakes or make the same mistakes. That's what he tells Tommy something.
Right.
Anyway, really good character development with everyone, and some interesting foreshadowing with especially with Robbie in my mind.
Yeah.
But good stuff going on. And now you see his hands being turned.
I thought these were the first really good episodes of the season. The other ones were okay, but they were not bad, but they were just more kind of, this is where we're at, and we're kind of setting things up. These ones were like, okay, let's get the ball rolling on what we're doing now. So
yeah,
that was good.
The gauntlet's been drawn or dropped. What does the gauntlet do? Ready to go for it. We had all our setup. We had our little confrontation.
Things are happening.
Yeah, now we're out of the gate. So. Anyway, Cobra Kai Season 2, awesome, episodes 5 and 6. If you didn't watch them, I don't know why you cared about what we had to say for so long. If you have any insights or anything cool to say about it, awesome. Share in the comments below. But definitely like, subscribe, follow, hit the little bell, whatever it is. Yeah, so let us know what you think of these episodes. We're really excited about it. Again, we miss you, Josh. Can't wait for you to jump back in and correct me, but we're not having a lot of Daniel arguments in these episodes, fortunately. So anyway, but Zach, thanks for joining. Thanks for being a part of it.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm a big Karate fan and Karate Kid fan, so I'll be
I have some questions about that in the next episode when we talk about some martial arts stuff. So cool. Anyway, okay. Well, thanks for watching Saints on Cinema, guys. We'll catch you next time.